Neki have signed to Pony Canyon and have a brand new album coming out this year called Meme. And obviously this is big news because this is a band who've made a huge splash and frankly one that I love a lot. I often do this to bring out my little Neki signed shirt as if you're like a fan credibility sign. But yeah, I mean, I've been following them since the first song, as I know a lot of you guys have. That first song, Get Over, made a massive splash when it came up, like over a year ago now, nearly 500,000 views already that's got. But they've continued that with other songs like Reagan Girl, 250,000 views. Looking at things like Loner and then A Dreams, you've got about 200,000 views. This is something that they've kept this going. They've grown. They've had their first one-man show at a Zepp Arena, which is, if you don't know, that's a fairly large live house setting. They've got lots of these Zepp venues. They're kind of medium to large size arenas, but they've been doing shows like that as one-man shows, just all about them bringing their fans in. They've just grown so much over this period of time and released amazing songs, and so I guess it was almost inevitable that they were going to sign to someone. But Pony Canyon is an interesting step, and it's one that I think for many reasons people expected me to have opinions about, which is why this is the one thing I've been asked about probably more than anything else in the last week or so since this news came out. So it's not exactly hot off the presses, but it's something where we've had a bit of time for it to sink in. And I'm going to give some thoughts on what I think about Neki signing to Pony Canyon and releasing this upcoming album, Meme. I do find this to be a fascinating subject, I'm going to be honest with you. So anyway, I'm going to slightly move that shirt to one side because I tell you what, I'm so nervous about that getting damaged that I'm just waiting to get a frame or something that I can. I want to get a frame and put it in there. I never get to wear that shirt out and about because I wouldn't wear a signed shirt. Oh no, I know some people do, but I'd be brokenhearted when eventually my own personal body odor was over a signed shirt. Anyway, shall we move on to the news? So, get through. Let's go straight to the source here, which is Pony Canyon on Pony Canyon's news site. I've put this on automatic translation, so there's a couple of little grammatical things that are wrong here, but it's basically, you get a rough idea for what's going on. So, obviously, we've got this brand new artist picture, which I think it's a cool artist picture. I love the fact that, as ever, they look super colourful. I've said this before. I am a great believer that bands who have a natural sort of charisma and fun to them, especially if they're bright and colourful, I kind of want their artist pictures to convey that. So the fact that a lot of bands do these serious pictures and like the slightly depressed looks, I'm like, that's not what you're really like. So, I prefer their more bright and upbeat pictures, but like with so many bands, they tend to do these cool ones. Fair enough. You do look cool, I'll give you that. So, what have Pony Canyon, the new money givers to Neki, said? Well, basically, let's go over this in brief. It says the 4-member girl band Neki, it does say Neki in the original, I don't know why it's done that wrong, probably because it's the exclamation mark, has been making a lot of buzz on social media, and the number of views of their performance video posted on Instagram exceeded 1 million. So this is a big thing. They have been getting a lot of attention both on YouTube, but also on the other social medias as well. And this is especially interesting, in my opinion, because obviously a lot of us know that they came to the attention of a lot of overseas fans because of their initial covers of Bandmade and sort of a feeling that they were accessible to Bandmade fans. Now, this is an angle that I don't especially like to overly push. I don't like young bands to be connected to other bands too strong. You want them to make their own identity. And if anything, I think Neki have done a lot of work to form their own identity. However, there's no doubt that Neki have been very happy to court this connection. Not only have they done the covers, not only have I seen them play Bandmade covers live on stage, but, well, one, it wasn't like they were just doing a whole cover set, but I've seen them do a Bandmade cover on stage. But on top of that as well, when I came out of the Bandmade show at Toyosu Pit the other week, a couple of months ago actually, that's where that was the second time I met Neki after getting the signed t-shirt. They were just outside in the street giving out leaflets, and I went up and chatted to them, and they were all there except for Natsu, and it was lovely. I'm glad that they recognized me from my videos. We had a nice conversation and everything, but yes, the fact that they were leafleting outside a Bandmade show clearly suggests that even with the huge number of Bandmade fans they've already courted, they have no trouble courting some more, so they have no problem with this connection. And of course, this is interesting because Bandmade themselves are with Pony Canyon. So it raises an interesting question about, those kind of similarities. But that's obviously where a lot of their international fandom has come from. However, when we talk about things like them having, good numbers of views on places like Instagram, these are, these are social medias where you're going to get a wide range of people seeing it. So I'm hoping that their domestic fandom is doing well as well. I must say, every time I've seen Neki live, they do have a very good turnout of Japanese fans. So I suspect that their pool of fans is probably going to wind up somewhere similar to Bandmade. Maybe an unusually high number of overseas fans, but also a very strong domestic presence as well. So it says here, although the specific debut date was not announced, it was announced at an unusually early point, about a year and a half, that the band's formation, after the band's formation in February 2024, and the venue was filed with a celebratory mood and a happy surprise. So this is talking about the Zepp Shinjuku live performance, which is where they made the announcement. So this was the Zepp Shinjuku, like I say, their first one-man performance in one of these big Zepp arena type places. And the Zepp Shinjuku venue, if you don't know, it's in the basement of I say a basement, it's a beautiful basement venue, but it's in the basement of a very new, big, fancy tower that is itself built on the square in Shinjuku, a very famous square in Shinjuku. And on the direct opposite side is the cinema you might have heard of. If you haven't been to Tokyo, you'll probably be familiar with this. It's a big Toho cinema. It's the one with the Godzilla on the top of it. The one where there's a big Godzilla statue kind of climbing over the top of the building. So that's where the performance was, in a very famous location, a fancy, relatively new venue. They booked out this place. They really sold it. I think they sold it out. They definitely filled it up a lot, though, if you see the photographs. And this is where they made their announcement of, basically linking up to Pony Canyon. Now, that all being said, this would have probably been in the works for quite a long time. And one of the questions that I've been asked a lot is, Howard, do you think Pony Canyon have had an involvement in this new album meme? Some people in my Discord community have done things like looking online to see if there was like the product code was a Pony Canyon product code and stuff like that. Look, I haven't done any of that kind of research, but the one thing I can tell you is that a company like Pony Canyon is not just going to randomly pick you up and announce your new album unless there's been a good amount of time building up to this. I'm sure there would have been a degree of involvement. I'm sure that they would have had some say in how this album was constructed, if not being entirely involved. So I don't know if they were entirely involved in the process, but even if they're not registered as it being one of their products, I assure you Pony Canyon was very much involved in making sure this album came out, at its best possible potential. But one of the things I would say about my experience with Pony Canyon, and I said this in another video that I did maybe 4 or 5 years ago when Bandmade signed up to Pony Canyon, and I did a similar video to this at that time. My experience of Pony Canyon, of which I do have some, is that they are a company who, as a general, they don't tamper with an artist when they pick up an artist, and they seem to be, in my opinion, probably one of, if not the best companies at understanding what they've signed and more just sort of funding that to continue rather than trying to tamper and steer it in a different direction. Now, obviously, Pony Canyon are connected to companies like Fuji TV and like that whole conglomerate of media, so they have a lot of connection to things like anime and such like. So you're obviously going to expect artists signed to Pony Canyons to do maybe even more than the usual number of anime theme tunes. We have ironically seen this with Bandmade. And so they're obviously going to use their connections, and there's going to be certain paths you're going to expect Pony Canyon artists to go down. But sonically, tone-wise, with the whole feeling of the music, I don't think that Pony Canyon are the kind of company who are going to interfere. In the same way that I don't feel they've interfered with Bandmade. I feel if anything, they've just kind of allowed Bandmade to sound more like Bandmade than Bandmade have ever Bandmaded before. And I think Neki are going to go in a similar direction. But obviously the thing is that Neki are a relatively new artist, only with 2 mini albums. So the question is what direction is that? There is still a lot of growth. They're still finding their own identity. So you kind of got this idea of allowing them to grow. And this album, Meme, as their first full-length album, it's a 10-track album, so we can call that an album. I still think an album should be at least 11, 12 tracks, but okay, 10 tracks. It's their first full-length album. This is a big moment for them. So we're going to be looking at things like how they grow, but also how Pony Canyon respects their sound. It's difficult. I feel like there's going to be some people who will hear Meme and there'll be a couple of songs that won't be what they've expected, and they'll probably be like, "Ah, Pony Canyon made them sound different" or something like that. And then you're also going to get other people who'll hear the album and yeah, 100% be like, "Oh yes, Neki have freed their sound and they've launched onto the big stage." The truth is that it's always difficult. You don't really know what's going on in the background, especially with a group like Neki, who, as it's been very clear in their credits on their first two mini albums, they write their songs, but they write them with co-writers. This comes up a lot. They do have co-writers. They do have arrangers and producers. They are a band who are at the core of everything they do, but they have other people around them. They have a team which is helping them grow. So we're going to expect some growth, but I think to me the most important thing is that when we hear this album Meme, I really want, and the cover and everything has been sort of shown down here. I think it's a nice cover. It's very much in line with their two previous mini albums. It had this kind of slightly ransom note-esque, well, OOAK had a ransom note-esque look to that single, but they always have this kind of interesting graffiti-esque, slightly pop chaotic, pop punk kind of look to them. And so I like the cover. I think the cover is very much in line with what they've been doing previously. Is the sound going to be in line with it? Well, as mentioned, we'll see. We'll see when it comes out. But if the songs OOAK and Rip Off are both singles from this album, then yeah, which it seems they are, then yeah, I think they've already laid out the indication that it's going to be more of, well, at least their continuation of what we expect from Neki. And I have said so many times before that I think that one of the most astounding things about Neki is that if you were to describe the genre of music they do, it is something we've got a lot of. They are a pop rock band with slightly heavier aspects. There's nothing unique about their genre, and yet at the same time, they're very identifiable sounding. Whether it's down to Hika's voice, I think she's a superb lead singer. I think her voice is very identifiable, but very emotionally resonant, whilst also being able to carry a good pop melody in a fun way. You've got that. You've got there's something about the balance of the sound of the band as well. Like Natsu, very much focused on counter melodies rather than just twiddling all the time, which some lead guitarists unfortunately do. Then you've got like bass guitarist, bass anyway, Kanade is just like this incredible sort of, obviously almost famous in her own right, force of like funky bass lines. And I think Kokoro is, to me, she's like one of the most exciting things about this band. Just the rhythms that she crafts are amazing. So, Neki have not done anything outlandish or out there, but they've got this very identifiable sound. And to me, it feels like Meme is Pony Canyon just saying, okay, do more of that. We'll sort out 10 tracks and off you go. So for me, I'm excited about this. I think this is going to be a genuinely good album in which Pony Canyon are going to allow them to be themselves. Now, a couple more points. It says here the album is available in 3 forms. Of course. I'm not even going to get into that subject. In addition, 10 songs in common formats, but it also be things like, okay, booklets, double CD versions. There'll be like if you go to different stores, you'll get like different bonuses. Like, so what's this one? 10 songs plus bonus, 2 songs photo book. This 2 audio commentary. Okay. Do you know what? I would just be fascinated to get the audio commentary and sit down and do a reaction to that. Poster booklets. So they got all these different versions. Acrylic carbiders, keychains, mega jacket. Bromides. I mean. Bromide's basically just like a checky, isn't it? So it's like there's all these different limited edition things that they're giving away as well. And then the record release party is going to be in Yokohama on the 26th of November. So, it's all the kind of normal stuff you'd expect from a release. It's all of that kind of stuff there. It's going to be special edition stuff for the people who want it. There's going to be all the little extra gifts and things. What do I basically think about this, though? Well, as I say, I think that Pony Canyon are a company who I would say overall I would trust with this kind of thing. I do think they tend to do a good job. I've noticed, and again, this is something I've commented on before, there'll always be people who pick something about any record company and go, I remember when they did this, and that's why I don't trust them. One of the good examples, I know there was that thing with Bandmade, when the Bandmade special edition It was one of the versions of the I think it was Unseen World, mate. No, it was Unleashed, maybe. It came out, and they put the band names in there, and they didn't put Misa. So it was like Miku, Saiki, Akane, Kanami, and they did not include Misa. And loads of people were like, "Oh, that's it, Pony Canyon forever. We can't trust them. They don't have that." Yeah, and you got all these kind of things. And yeah, record companies make mistakes, and that you shouldn't. I wouldn't forgive them. Well, I wouldn't sort of let them off the hook for that. You know, record companies should be about their business. They should do a good job. Things like misprints and stuff like that. These are not cool things, but at the same time, I think in the grand scheme of things, that's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean you suddenly can't trust the company. And as I've said before as well, a lot of people see any record company and they just have this immediate negative impression, which is usually because we think, oh, record company, oh, faceless people profiting from small bands, blah, 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 blah. If you've ever worked with a record company, yes, there are some who are like that, and even in the best record companies, there will be some cold hard executives who are just all about the coin. But the truth is that a lot of these record companies, Pony Canyon, I think, is a good example, have a huge number of people who work in there who they didn't just sort of like pick an office job and end up in a record company. They wanted to work with music. Music is their life. They love music as much as any of us in the fandom. I'm not saying everyone, but yeah, there's a lot of people working in these companies who really love music. So I'd say, you know, there are good record companies out there. There are record companies who are good people to work with. And I think that Pony Canyon with Neki, I think that's a great combination. I think it's going to be good to see them with that extra funding, able to expand what they do, reach larger audiences. Maybe it'll give them the ability to tour overseas for you folks who are not in Japan. I want to keep them here with me. And maybe they'll be touring overseas more, which I think will be great for a lot of fans. Ultimately, the question I think that really comes down, though, is this one about, well, how's Meme going to sound? I think the initial indications, looking at the way the cover art has not been suddenly changed into a different style, looking at how they've still been keeping their colourful look as per this photograph, listening to those first couple of songs that have come out from Meme. Yeah, I think Meme is going to definitely be a great continuation, expansion upon the Neki that we've had up until this point. I think the broader question is more, what do we expect from the future? I think my biggest concern about them signing to Pony Canyon is the fact that they've signed to the same company that Bandmate are on. And look, I love the camaraderie, I love that aspect, but the truth is that I do kind of, I don't want Bandmate and Neki to I want them to have a good, clear separation, because for me, the things they do best are not the same things. I understand they share some fans, I understand there's commonalities in their sound, but to me, the thing that makes Neki really good and the thing that makes Bandmate really good are just, they're not the same. So in a way, I hope that they keep that clear separation. I want to hear Neki kind of, in a way, like Bandmate have got harder and harder as they've appealed more and more to overseas fans. And I'm not saying that that's against their will, but obviously, you know, a lot of overseas fans tend to come from the heavier genres. And, you know, when you hear positive feedback for your heavier songs, you tend to respond to that. You know, Neki, for me, a lot of what makes them so good is the bits where they're not being heavy. Like, they have some good heavy songs, but I like that sort of melodic, slightly more cheeky, fun, upbeat vibe they have, which I think they carry better than most other bands, and yet whilst also delivering emotion. I like how you can get songs like Loner that actually have quite a emotional intensity to them, but they're also quite accessible. You know, it's a song that you can put on in kind of any mood, and you can put it alongside a song like Dreams that is definitely full on pop punk, and it works. So in a way, I want Neki to maintain that bright, slightly poppy sound and not hopefully be dragged too much into the direction of becoming heavier than they otherwise would. But if anything, as I mentioned, I can't help but feel like Pony Canyon is probably the best place to be, specifically because Pony Canyon probably will be the company to say, hey, this is what makes you stick to it. I just hope that no one goes, hey, what makes you successful is the fact that you got a lot of Bandmate fans, so maybe you should sound more like Bandmate, because that for me would completely destroy everything that makes them so unique. But again, I only am still talking about this Bandmate Neki comparison because of the fact that, as I say, they appear to court it. They are on the same company as Pony Canyon. And of course, a lot of the people I talk to online who are Neki fans are from the Bandmate community. So I feel like this is a subject that I want to escape the orbit of this subject, but it's still there. The funny thing, I mentioned this, when I met Neki outside the, and I'm going to say this, and apologies in advance if this upsets you. When I met, trigger warning, when I met Neki outside that Bandmade show, I was speaking to them in Japanese, obviously. And one thing you know if you speak a second language and you're not super fluent in it is you'll occasionally say what you want to say, maybe too directly, because you just kind of say what's on top of your mind because you gotta get it out and you don't have time to really quite pass it through that filter of like properly putting it together. And there was one moment where I was speaking to Kokoro and Kanade, and of course we just come out of the Bandmade show. And so they were like they were giving out leaflets, obviously trying to get fans. And obviously they recognised I was already a fan of theirs when I came up to them because they'd seen the videos. And so I was talking to them, and they kind of mentioned about, oh well, you know, here's our show. And actually, that's where I got that poster from. That's the one they handed to me. They were like, oh well, you know, please do come to the one man show and everything. And I was like, oh yeah, of course. But they were saying at the same time, please come to it. But of course, but you know, we're not quite Bandmade. We're not quite Bandmade. And this was kind of the insinuation. And I just kind of like responded as, actually, I kind of prefer Neki. And I didn't say it like that. It's kind of hard to describe exactly how I said it, but it was more a case of, I kind of more said, I listen to Neki more. And there was a moment of there. It was like a little shocked moment, and then Kokoro was like, "Oh yeah, but Bandmade." And I don't know whether they realised that because I'm a big Bandmade fan. I've been following Bandmade since January 2019. I can remember vividly. But yeah, no, I can't help but feel like Neki, as new as they are, has been something that has been just so. I've loved everything they've done so much that. Yeah, I hope that they never feel like they're in a shadow. I hope they never proceed in that direction. So, Meme, for me, I want Meme to do well. I'll obviously be covering it. I'll be doing little reaction videos to every track when it comes out. I'll be putting out all my usual content. But I really want Meme to do well. And I want it to be Neki being Neki, 100% succeeding. Because if it does really well, then that will hopefully be the thing that will establish the Neki sound and allow Neki to be Neki in a Neki way. But as mentioned, at the moment, I feel like the signs we've seen from the cover art, from the songs that have been released so far, I've got a positive vibe. And I think Pony Canyon, if anyone's going to do a job, it's going to be Pony Canyon, despite obviously the slight nervous fact that they are the same company who has Bandmade under their wing. I still feel confident that, yeah, this could be a great thing for their Neki sound. Anyway, as usual, those are my thoughts. Get in the comments. Tell me what you think. If you want to discuss Japanese music more, remember we've got the Discord link below as well. Discord's been going for like 6 million years. So feel free to go in there, share the music you love, find new music from other people. And until I hopefully see you very soon in Japan for the next one of these, for now. It's not coffee, it's just water. I need to make more coffee. Ciao, ciao.